Okay. Hello, 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 hello. As per usual, this is just an absolute mess. I have no idea if this is working. Hang on a second. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Chickadee chickadee check 1 2. Check 1 2. It's a little quiet, I think. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Can we do check 1 2, check 1 2. Hello, 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 hello. Okay. And of course my camera keeps freezing, which is awesome. Why is it doing that? What an absolute mess. And now it's not even... Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna totally reset the whole John. Okay, I'm officially in frame, which is, I guess, the best we can hope for at this exact moment in time. This is the first time in a while that I've done one of these on a computer instead of on my phone. I've been doing them on my phone. So, folks, just bear with me here for a second. As we are about to begin talking about Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, I just want to make sure everything's all dialed in, because I really would hate to do all of this and then have the live stream not even really not even anything. That would suck. Okay. I think it's good. I think it's all good. I'm pretty sure that it is officially all good. Take all this shit off. Folks, what the heck is going on, people? It is officially What You Readin' For, number 7. I have been waiting to do this one for a while. I'm a little bit sad because this one in particular, this book, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, is one of the best books I've ever read. And I'm a little bit sad that I kind of have the books that I've been reading in the past couple months, I have kind of switched formats for how I'm going to do these, because previously I wasn't really, with the exception of 1 or 2 books, I wasn't really like taking a whole lot of notes on it as I was reading it. And so when I would sit down to do these, I would kind of just freeball it as I'm doing right now, and just kind of talk about whatever came to mind for that particular book. And that is the case for this book too. In books going forward from this book, the next book is going to be Dracula by Bram Stoker. I have been doing, I think, a better job at taking notes and making sure that I actually sort of have interesting things to say once the camera turns on, or at least I hope they're interesting. Who knows if they actually are. So one thing I should say before we really get rolling here, if you enjoy listening and seeing me talk about books, you should subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when I go live. You should also like this stream so that I do more of them. You should also comment and let me know what you think of Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. You can also follow me on twitch.tv/Drognath, where I play video games occasionally. And if you go on TikTok and Blue Sky, is that what it's called? Is it called Blue Sky? I think it is. Yeah, Blue Sky. If you go on TikTok and Blue Sky, you look up Drognath. I'm on there as well. Those ones I post to with less frequency, if I'm being honest. I don't really check my TikTok like at all. But occasionally I will post there. So if that's something that might interest you, check it out. So let's get down to business. We've been streaming for almost 10 minutes and I haven't really said anything of note. What I was basically getting at before is that Blood Meridian, it's kind of a shame that I didn't take any notes on this because it's been a while since I read it. I finished this at the end of January, I believe, and here we are almost in April. So I'm a little bit behind on my books and doing live streams about them. I'm a little bit behind, and you'll see just how far behind I am at the end of this stream when I talk about what's up next for What You Readin' For. But this book in particular, I think, would have benefited from the treatment of what I'm kind of doing now, which is taking more thorough notes during my reads, because this book is very dense, and there's a lot of it's hard to explain. There's like a dense philosophy to this book, and the imagery of sort of the landscape and the desolate wasteland that these characters find themselves in. The imagery is really impactful, and I would love to kind of read some of it for you guys. I could try to find some as I go through here, but it would have been a lot easier if I had marked page numbers as I had been going, as I tend to do now with books that I read. But anyhow, it also might not be best for me to read directly from this book because there is a lot of slurs, and that's something we'll get into here in a minute. One thing I want to say before I get started on the book itself is that so my kind of history with Cormac McCarthy is that when I was a sophomore or junior in high school, I actually a few years before oh, sorry, I heard something outside and I was like, what is that? A few years before I read this book that I'm about to talk about, I saw a movie called The Road with Viggo Mortensen and I can't remember the kid's name, but a book based on The Road, or excuse me, a movie based on the book The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and I really liked it. I liked it a lot. In retrospect, I don't think it's like that groundbreaking of a movie. I think it's an okay post-apocalypse movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I might want to double back on it eventually. But I really liked it. So I decided that I would read the book that it was based on. And I really, really liked the book. It is very impactful. Sorry, I'm just checking a message. Very impactful. It's very sad, and I will say that it's not for the faint of heart. I think most people, when they read a book like that, their immediate impression is to kind of shy away from it. And that is kind of my impression of Cormac McCarthy as a whole now. Now having read Blood Meridian. But anyhow, I sort of read that book, really liked it, and then didn't really pick up on anything from Cormac McCarthy for a while until I joined this book club that I'm a part of now. And a lot of the books that I'm going to be talking about for this channel are being read as a result of being part of this book club. And Blood Meridian came up, and I didn't know much about it. I knew that it was pretty well known, like a lot of people talk about it. Not necessarily in a positive light. There's a lot of people that I think it's a very divisive book. Certainly when my book club had our meeting about this book, it was pretty, I would say, pretty split between people who I would say it was pretty evenly split between people that appreciated it and people that actively disliked it. I think I was probably the only person that actually did enjoy it and enjoyed it quite a bit. But one thing I will say is that the Cormac McCarthy, I think, has a way of being a litmus test for people who are able to kind of delve a little bit deeper into their fiction, I guess. It's hard to just classify it as like just straightforward fiction because it's a very particular type of fiction. It's very poetic and very dense and very brutal. It's very upfront. The writing does not leave a whole lot for the imagination. It kind of leaves everything on the page and lets you as the reader just kind of experience it as viscerally as the characters themselves are, which is something that I particularly like about Cormac McCarthy's writing. I will say too, before we get too deep in, Cormac McCarthy probably wasn't a great man. I don't typically feel the need to make these kind of qualifications before talking about a book, because I think that there is something to be said about separating the art from the artist, or the novel from their novelist, from its novelist, I guess you could say. I think there's something to be said about that books in particular are capable of sending messages to the reader that go beyond the social and cultural impacts of their authors. Hopefully what I just said makes sense. I was kind of trying to work my way through that sentence. I'm trying to be as clear as possible here. Cormac McCarthy most likely was a pedophile. And I say most likely because all I've really read about this is that there is one person who alleges that he groomed her and had a relationship with her when she was like 14 and he was like in his 30s, I think. Now I kind of, in these situations, I'm sort of just like, just believe the person who's alleging these types of things. But I think it's important, as somebody who's a pre-law student, I think it's important to acknowledge that Cormac McCarthy was never indicted on any of this stuff. He was never really convicted of anything. Nothing. The only thing that we really have to go on is the word of this person. Although I think if you read the article that I read, the person in question is pretty credible, and I think it's safe to say that what she's saying is true. That being said, when you read a lot, you're going to inevitably bump up into the question of whether or not the creator of a piece of art should be considered when talking about the art itself. I think in general they should be, right? I think in general the person who wrote the book and the time in which they live and the things they're writing about from their perspective, I think all of those things have to kind of go into the conversation about the thing that they wrote. And that being said, you know, if you're talking about Lovecraft, you have to talk about Lovecraft himself, right? If you're talking about, you know, what are some other good examples of this? The guy who wrote Lolita, I can't even remember his name. It's important to talk about him as a person before you talk about the thing that they wrote. And I think especially when you're reading older white men, I think it's important that you talk about the circumstances surrounding their writings as you work through them. That's what I'm going to say about that. Because that's kind of that's the only thing I can meaningfully contribute on that front. So let's get down to business. Let's talk about the book, Blood Meridian. Why is it so well known? And I hesitate to call it so revered because I think while I do think a lot of people do like it, including me, it's sort of the atmosphere that it goes for and tries to build is so off-putting to the sensibilities of most any reader, I think. Especially with modern sensibilities. This book doesn't shy away from, I guess I should say just right up front, there's going to be spoilers in this little overview. If you want to read the book, go read it. I don't necessarily think that spoiling it would stop your enjoyment of the book itself. I think it's worth reading even if you do get certain elements of it spoiled for you. Just because the tone really is kind of what makes this book interesting to read, more than like the actual plot events that happen. That's just my opinion. This book is set in, I believe, the late 1840s. I think it might be in 1849, maybe like 1850, somewhere in that milieu. So this book doesn't shy away from the racism of that day. It doesn't shy away from any of the characters, including characters you would consider protagonists, using slurs and sort of being culturally insensitive to anyone who is not like them. The book mainly revolves around a cast of characters called the Glanton Gang, named after the leader, Glanton. Walter Glanton, I think is his name. I don't particularly remember. But in this Glanton Gang, there are a bunch of... it's just a cast of really rowdy characters. And among their number is sort of, I guess, what you might call the main character of the book. Although there is something to be said about... I felt as though when I was reading the book, that the landscape kind of is the main character, because all of the things that are said about the landscape feel more rich and intense than the things that are said about the characters themselves, which kind of left me with the impression of like McCarthy is kind of describing the characters as almost like a nature documentarian, just kind of straight up describing what they do and what they say, and not like delving into motivations or thoughts. It's kind of just describing exactly what's happening. The landscape, though, McCarthy goes into great detail describing where they're riding, and the thunder over the hills, and the stars wheeling above them, and all this kind of stuff. It's really, really poetic and beautiful. Some of the most beautiful writing I have ever read. But as I was saying, among Glanton's gang, one of the people is somebody only referred to as the Kid, who, I guess you could call the main character of this book, although large portions of this book focus on Glanton himself, focus on a character called the Judge, who is this kind of large, bald, like manifestation of evil. He does pretty... the entire gang does some pretty despicable things over the course of the book, but the Judge in particular, I think, is the most egregious of them, indulging the most in pedophilia, as well as kind of just wanton torture and like sort of just like causing suffering for the sake of suffering, and not necessarily for any particular reason. Not that, again, a large majority of the violence portrayed in this book, there really is no reason for, aside from sometimes it's money, sometimes it's because a character isn't really getting their way. But no real like good reason, or like larger, good reason, I guess you could say, for some of the violence in this book. So you've got Glanton, the leader of this gang. You've got the Judge, who's kind of Glanton's right-hand man in some ways. He's also kind of just someone who is considered weirdly kind of more wise and philosophical and theological than most of the other members. He seems to be more educated in general. Some people say that he used to actually be a judge, like he used to be the presiding judge over like a circuit court of some kind. But he's incredibly cruel and incredibly large. And so that's the Judge. You've got the Kid. You've got two characters that are kind of like they both are named Jackson. One is a black American, and one is white guy. And this kind of interplay between them is kind of sprinkled throughout the first sort of half of the book, before Black Jackson eventually cuts off White Jackson's head when White Jackson does something particularly racist. One of the few overt moments of kind of anti-racism, I guess you could say, in Blood Meridian, because most of the anti-racism, I think, is kind of like, I don't want to say subtextual, because it's kind of like obvious. It's so hard to explain. The way that it's written, it kind of feels like McCarthy doesn't try to shy away from portraying the racism and the overt violence and horror of it all. And because he doesn't really shy away from any of it, it kind of speaks for itself. My impression of it is that when you're reading this book, the things described and done are so awful that it would almost be overkill to sort of try to describe to the reader why it's bad, or try to kind of like show to the reader that it's a bad thing. It's kind of just doing that by virtue of existing on its own. And there have been criticisms of this book of kind of like, if McCarthy is sort of anti-racist or anti-violence, why does he seem to kind of revel in it, or why does he portray it at all? And I think that it's important to remember sometimes that like history is history, and portraying it accurately is uncomfortable, but I think it's probably necessary. And I understand that, particularly with things like a white writer using the N-word to kind of illustrate certain points in their writing, I understand that I, as a white reader, might respond to that differently than a black reader might, if that makes sense. I understand my particular worldview influences the way I read things. Nevertheless, I think that it's important when trying to accurately and brutally display a certain time and place following a certain group of characters. I think it's sometimes really important to get it correct and get it right. Or else some of the impact is lost, and through some of the impact being lost, it might communicate to the reader that the author is in some way reveling in the violence and the racism. Only through accurately portraying it for what it is can you so totally convince the reader that these things are as brutal as they are. I hope I'm communicating that effectively. Again, I recognize that this is very easy for me to say as someone who has never experienced racism at that level. So hopefully that's rather clear on where I stand on that and where I think the line is. So let's talk a little bit about this book's philosophy, because I think that it's very important to talk about what this book is ultimately kind of trying to say. Now, let me see if I can find it here, because it gets reiterated a couple times throughout this book. Man, I might not be able to find it. Okay, here it is. And again, the way this book is written, it's just like there's no quotation marks to tell you when someone is speaking or when something is being described or who's speaking. He just puts it all on the page. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna read um I'm gonna read some from the book here, and I'm gonna read quite a bit because I think this whole kind of 2-page interaction is the crux of the book, really. And this kind of thing gets sort of reiterated throughout the book, where there are certain times when the Glanton gang is camping, and the judge kind of goes on these philosophical, mythological rants about the nature of reality, the nature of war, the nature of humanity. And the rest of the book, I think, is the purpose is to kind of reinforce these points. So I want to just read here. Hopefully I don't stumble across any slurs, but we'll try to keep those in context and hopefully skip over them if we can. So, yeah, okay, so already as I'm kind of skimming through this, there's some uncouth language. We'll just take it for what it is. So here we go. This is page 259. They rode on, and the wind drove the fine gray dust before them, and they rode an army of graybeards, gray men, gray horses. The mountains to the north lay sunwise, in corrugated folds, and the days were cool, and the nights were cold, and they sat about the fire, each in his round of darkness, in that round of dark, while the idiot watched from his cage at the edge of the light. At this point in the book, they have a caged man that they call the idiot, just sort of on the journey with them. The judge cracked with the back of an axe the shin bone of an antelope, and the hot marrow dripped smoking on the stones. They watched him. The subject was war. The good book says that he that lives by the sword shall perish by the sword, said the black. The judge smiled, his face shining with grease. What right man would have it any other way, he said. The good book does indeed count war and evil, said Irving. Yet there's many a bloody tale of war inside it. It makes no difference what men think of war, said the judge. War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it was and will be. That way and not some other way. He turned to Brown, from whom he'd heard some whispered slur or demur. Ah, Davy, he said, it's your own trade we honor here. Why not rather take a small bow? Let each acknowledge each. My trade? Certainly. What is my trade? War. War is your trade, is it not? And it ain't yours? Mine too, very much so. What about all them notebooks and bones and stuff? All other trades are contained in that of war. Is that why war endures? No. It endures because young men love it and old men love it in them. Those that fought, those that did not. That's your notion. The judge smiled. Men are born for games, nothing else. Every child knows that play is nobler than work. He knows, too, that the worth or merit of a game is not inherent in the game itself, but rather in the value of that which is put at hazard. Games of chance require a wager to have meaning at all. Games of sport involve the skill and strength of the opponents, and the humiliation of defeat and the pride of victory are in themselves sufficient stake because they inhere in the worth of the principles and define them. But trial of chance or trial of worth, all games aspire to the condition of war, for here that which is wagered swallows up game, player, all. Suppose two men at cards with nothing to wager save their lives. Who has not heard such a tale? A turn of the card. The whole universe for such a player has labored clanking to this moment, which will tell if he is to die at that man's hand or that man at his. What more certain validation of a man's worth could there be? This enhancement of the game to its ultimate state admits no argument concerning the notion of fate. The selection of one man over another is a preference absolute and irrevocable, and it is a dull man indeed who could reckon so profound a decision without agency or significance, either one. In such games as have for their stake the annihilation of the defeated, the decisions are quite clear. This man, holding this particular arrangement of cards in his hand, is thereby removed from existence. This is the nature of war, whose stake is at once the game and the authority and the justification. Seen so, war is the truest form of divination. It is the testing of one's will and the will of another within that larger will, which because it binds them, is therefore forced to select. War is the ultimate game because war is at last a forcing of the unity of existence. War is God. Brown studied the judge. You're crazy, Holden. Crazy at last. The judge smiled. Might does not make right, said Irving. The man that wins in some combat is not vindicated morally. Moral law is an invention of mankind for the disenfranchisement of the powerful in favor of the weak. Historical law subverts it at every turn. A moral view can never be proven right or wrong by any ultimate test. A man falling dead in a duel is not thought thereby to be proven in error as to his views. His very involvement in such a trial gives evidence of a new and broader view. The willingness of the principles to forego further argument as the triviality which it in fact is and to petition directly the chambers of the historical absolute clearly indicates of how little moment are the opinions and of what great moment the divergences thereof. For the argument is indeed trivial, but not so the separate wills thereby made manifest. Man's vanity may well approach the infinite in capacity, but his knowledge remains imperfect, and however much he comes to value his judgments, ultimately he must submit them before a higher court. Here there can be no special pleading. Here are considerations of equity and rectitude and moral right rendered void and without warrant. And here are the views of the litigants despised. Decisions of life and death, of what shall be and what shall not, beggar all question of right. In elections of these magnitudes are all lesser ones subsumed, moral, spiritual, natural. The judge searched out the circle for disputants. But what says the priest? He said. Tobin looked up. The priest does not say. Tobin is the priest. The priest does not say, said the judge. Nihil dicit. I think that's Latin. I'm not sure, though. But the priest has said, for the priest has put by the robes of his craft and taken up the tools of that higher calling which all men honor. The priest also would be no God-server, but a God himself. Tobin shook his head. You have a blasphemous tongue, Holden, and in truth I was never a priest, but only a novitiate to the order. Journeyman priest or apprentice priest, said the judge, men of God and men of war have strange affinities. I'll not second say you in your notions, said Tobin. Don't ask it. Ah, priest, said the judge, what could I ask of you that you've not already given? I have never read anything like this book. I don't know exactly what it is, but when I'm reading it, it just whisks me away. It absolutely whisks me away. There's something about these warrior, insanely violent men, these warlike, horrible human beings that know that they're wrong, that what they're doing is wrong, and that they will be punished. Well, in the theology of some of them at least, they will be punished. But most of them recognize that they're not on the right path. And they stop sometimes to have these conversations about morality and war and human nature that are so deep. I hate to use that word because it's kind of cliched, but just these deep conversations about what they're doing and who they are and what their ultimate place in the universe is. And Holden's kind of, the judge's estimation of what humankind has always been about. This kind of spiritual pull towards war and battle and death. It's funny because it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell sometimes. This is maybe ultimately what I like the most about this book, is that the judge's assertion that humans can't rise above that pull towards war, and that might truly does make right because there is no other way. It's hard to say if that is a philosophy which McCarthy shares with the judge, or if McCarthy is trying to indict this particular worldview by having that worldview said by a man who is so objectively evil that it again, as I was saying before, it makes the point for itself. It cannot be interpreted any other way. That the kind of might makes right mentality, while seductive in its simplicity and its appearance of being upheld by reality, is still being said by one of the most despicable human beings to ever exist. So it kind of invalidates itself in a way. But on the other hand, is something that seems to be so fundamentally true about reality. Does it make it untrue because the man who is saying it is despicable? It's truly hard to say, and it's interesting to think about. And personally, I think that's one of the things that I enjoyed the most about the book, is that some of the fundamental underlying truths about what is happening in the book make you start to peel away at your own worldview. I don't ascribe to the... I don't know if it's ascribe or subscribe, but I don't... in general, I don't agree with the estimation of human struggle in the might makes right sort of dichotomy. I don't think that the strongest should sort of rule. But yet, it kind of seems like they do. The only people who can rule are the people who have the ability to smite any who would stand against them. And in that way, it doesn't really matter if you believe in it or not, because it simply is. And that kind of is the point that Judge Holden is trying to make, is that it makes no difference what man thinks about war, because you may as well ask what man thinks about stone. It simply is. And so it's hard to dispute that particular notion. And so when something like that is presented to me, at least, it makes me start to think about why I think the things that I do. And books that are able to do that, to pose those fundamental questions to you, I think automatically qualify as good books. Regardless of what you think about the prose, of what you think about Cormac McCarthy, of what you think about the insanely horrid, violent acts that are described in this book, regardless of any of that, books that make you fundamentally question your worldview, I think have to be good books. And that is no more clear to me than now, after having read some real trash over the last few months since I read Blood Meridian. Some real trash. Maybe not some of the the worst books in the world, but certainly some time wasters. And I think we'll get into sort of our plan going forward for what you read and for what we're going to kind of go over in the next few episodes. So closing thoughts. Blood Meridian. I mean, personally, in my top 5 books I've ever read, it might even be like in my top 3. I think it's this, The Wager, oh man, yeah, it's like this, The Wager, maybe like The Hobbit. I don't know. It's up there for sure. It's so undeniable. It's so it's a blunt instrument of a book. It beats you over the head with its themes and points that it's trying to make. And I first, it's definitely not for everybody, which is why it's hard to recommend to people. Personally, I think it's one of the best books ever written, that I've read at least. I think it's definitely worth checking out. If it's not one of the best books ever written, it's certainly one of the best Westerns, I think. And I think it's required reading for anybody. I just think that it's significant enough to warrant calling it that. I think everybody should give it a try. Even though, again, probably 90% of people will read this book and might not even make it through the first 50 pages, because it's that brutal. And some of the things that happen are truly horrid. But yeah, it's phenomenal. Great book. It has a lot to say, and I think it says it in the best way possible. There you go. What You Reading For, number 7. in the books, baby. So we got through Blood Meridian. Next on the list is going to be Dracula by Bram Stoker. As you can see, I'm still like halfway through it. It's taking me a very long time to get through this book. We'll go over why kind of once I actually do the episode on it. Hopefully should be finishing that in the next couple days. After that, after Bram Stoker's Dracula, we'll be talking about this bad boy, which is another of the book club books, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm going to kind of alternate between personal reading and book club books. So it's kind of one after the other. Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah Moss. We'll be reading after Dracula. I've already finished that one. After that, hang on. Let me double check something just to make sure I have the order here correctly. Boo. Okay, yeah. After that will be this book called Fear and Loathing in America. It is the second in a series that I started a long time ago. I don't expect anybody to read this with me because it's basically just a collection of letters sent by Hunter S. Thompson over the course of his life, especially his early career. It's been something on my bookshelf for a long time. I read the first book. I may as well check out the second book. And some of these books that I'm going to be reading over the next couple months are going to be just books that have been on my shelf for a long time that I need to kind of work through, because to know if they even belong on your shelf, you kind of just got to read them and see, what you think about them. After Fear and Loathing in America, we will be reading Mexican Gothic. I've already finished this one. This was another book club book, very popular book. We'll be talking about that one afterwards. Mexican Gothic is by Silvia Moreno Garcia. If you're reading along at home and you want to find the book. Bing Bang Boom. After that, we will be reading, I believe the next one after that is going to be The Time Machine, H.G. Wells. That'll be the next up on the list. Again, has been sitting on my shelf for a long time. I've been wanting to read it for a long time. It's more of a short story, I guess you could say, than it is really, or like a novella of some kind, than it is like a long book. It's very, very short. Boom. After that, the next book club book, 100 Years of Solitude, by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It could be Gabrielle. I actually don't know the gender of the author. I think it's Gabriel. This looks like it's going to be good. I'm very, very excited. It's like historical fiction, I believe. I'm excited to check this one out. I haven't read it yet. So, 100 Years of Solitude. Boom. The final book. I know this is a long list, but I want to give people enough time to sort of get the book, read the book, all of that. Right after that, The Great Shark Hunt, Hunter S. Thompson. Another Thompson book. Another one that's been on my shelf for a long time, probably like 10 years it's been since I've actually since I've been meaning to read this. It's been on there for a while. So it's a long list of books. Hopefully you guys are able to get one or two of them so that we can kind of have this be more of a book club thing. And there's plenty more to read after that. I'm trying to read 26 books this year. I think I just finished the 4th book this year. I'm a little bit behind. Like I said, Dracula has taken me a long time to get through. So I'm looking forward to moving forward and reading some more and getting to talk with you guys about it. Once again, if you liked this, please make sure to like the live stream so that I do more of them. Subscribe so you get notified when I do go live. Comment. Let me know what you thought of Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Did you like it? Did you not like it? As most people, I think, don't. And follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Drognath. TikTok, Blue Sky. Look up Drognath. Go over there, check me out. Yeah, that's pretty much it, folks. I love all of you so much. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.